Welcome to A Day in the Life. We've covered a lot of interesting careers so far on our show, like doctors, nurses, and lawyers. But today we're headed off the beaten track just a little and spending the day with someone who I think probably has the most interesting resume of anyone I know. His name is Chris Beleskey, and he's a real-life animal wrangler. Ask Chris Beleskey what his actual job here is at the Elmville Jungle Zoo, and he'll tell you that he gets paid to play with animals all day. And while that may be true, we found that there was just a little bit more to the job description than that.
Well, an animal wrangler is somebody that works with the animals, whether they're young babies that were just born here at the zoo or new animals that we get in. And we do promotion shows here where we talk about basically what it's like to be at the zoo, to live at the zoo, to be a part of our breeding programs. Animal wrangler is talking to people about education, conservation, animal awareness. We even answer questions about global warming, things like that, dinosaurs. We try and answer questions, whatever they have about the environment, about climate change, about animals, about how they can make a difference in the world. That's what an animal wrangler at the zoo is. It's not really an association. There are a lot of private collectors and they're animal wranglers. We've got a lot of places around here. Friends of mine have a zoo up by Bracebridge. There's Bear Creek just up the road, and they have a pretty big selection of animals, and they have lions, tigers, all that kind of stuff. So they're animal wranglers. You don't necessarily have to work with a zoo to be considered an animal wrangler. A lot of people that work in the oceans don't actually ever own an animal or work in an aquarium setting, but they're animal wranglers. If they're shark wranglers, if they're divers, things like that, depending on the species of animals you want to work with. It depends completely on the type of animal. It's kind of a loose definition. Anybody who works with animals and studies them could be considered an animal wrangler. Zoologist is more field work, more studies. They study more behaviors, populations, dynamics, changing the populations. A lot of times, if you have just at the end of your name, biologist, zoologist, herpetologist, you tend to be the scientific end of whatever the animal species you're studying is. Herpetologist would be reptiles, so you would study more specific breeding. So you might work with a zoo or a university or a government job. That's probably where you would end up there. So it's less hands-on. If you work for Canadian Fish and Wildlife, you may go your entire career with never actually touching an animal or a live animal, but you would study the tracks of animals, the reported sightings of animals, the migration routes of animals, the trapping, the importing, the exporting of certain types of animals in your area, your region. That's definitely more number crunching. In that end, ours is more hands-on, kind of with the live animals sort of experience.
Becoming an animal wrangler has been a bit of an evolution for Chris, who actually started helping at reptile shows when he was only 10 years old. Since that time, he's made it his mission to show that reptiles get a bad rap. Now, if I were a serious journalist, I'd be asking Chris to put that snake back there around my neck. Nobody said I was a serious journalist.
And my mom hated snakes, absolutely was deadly afraid of snakes. So she said one time, you can have one snake. Now, coming from Alberta, we have pits where thousands of snakes will come out in the spring when they're forming mating balls, garter snakes. So I found the biggest snake I could find because she said I could have one. So I got to get this snake. I set it up in an aquarium at home, and it was great. It was a perfect snake. She came home one day and we found 42 little baby snakes crawling all over because the garter snakes had baby snakes. Now my tank was designed to keep the big mom in there that I didn't know was pregnant, and we only found 42, so I have no idea how many snakes she actually had. So that was my first experience, and I thought, that's pretty exciting stuff. I'd like to be involved in that with the rest of my life. We worked really hard to get these guys. We waited 10 years, built a great big giraffe barn in the back for them. We worked pretty hard to get these guys. They're all boys. There you go, buddy. They prefer bananas, but this is brand new. We keep trying them on new and different foods. You're not sure about that, huh? You see the corn, you think it's a banana. In the wild, when they're adults like this, they don't really have any natural predators. but they have to start out life dropping from their mom at birth 6 feet to the ground, and that's how they enter the world. So from there, they learn how to run. They don't even see very well, so they have to swing their heads, and they run into a lot of trees because they don't see forward very well. So once you get to be a big giraffe, tallest animal on the planet, life isn't so hard. But if you're a boy, you have to fight with other boys all the time to make sure that everybody knows you're the biggest boy and you get the females, and they travel in herds, so that certainly works for them. They have a little bit of advantage that way. At the age of 10, having the vision doesn't mean a whole lot most of the time, especially in northern Alberta. So my parents were very supportive. They took me to the guidance counselor. I don't know if it was to straighten me out or to make sure I knew what I was doing. I think it was to make sure I knew I was on the right track. And I was very into school at the time. So we ended up figuring out what courses I needed. And at the time, it was herpetology for reptiles. We went down to the University of Alberta, and I got behind the scenes with some of the people there. They told me what courses I needed. And then I started into high school. And from there, I just kind of kept my eyes open, and I started a company that did animal shows in Barrie here, and we did birthday parties and things like that. So by the time I got to the zoo, people had already known who I was and that I could raise animals, and I would look after the reptiles in the winter and whatnot. So it was just kind of a natural progression for me.
Although Chris has applied his expertise as an animal wrangler, there are actually endless opportunities with someone who has credentials like Chris.
I kind of liked working for myself, and I started doing shows when I was 10 for schools, and then from there I just kind of started a company that did animal promotions. We did shows at malls and schools and things like that, and then birthday parties, and then that took off and we got really busy, and then it got bigger and it led to the zoo, and now every day of the summer I'm here at the zoo. So basically it was kind of, I started it, and then it just kind of crossed over with the other promotions that I do in my regular life, and everything just kind of came together.
Your salary as an animal wrangler really varies from zoo to zoo, but if you're creative, like Chris, then you can use your other skills to benefit your bank account.
You can make a living. You're never going to get rich with it. The private zoos are really being regulated like crazy. The big zoos, even those guys, they have more people going through every year. You have more people going through zoos every year than football, baseball, and basketball games combined. But they're run by the cities, by governments, and those guys have a huge budget. They pay their people pretty well. They have benefits. It's kind of a union job for those guys. But nobody ever gets rich at it. Even our zoo here, it's a smaller, privately owned zoo. We've been here 40 years. He lives in a small house in the front, so it's not like people make a lot of money at it. They do it because they love it. It's their passion. And if you can do a job and get paid and sort of make a living at it, it's a pretty good life. I don't think it's going to be an art so much as more legacy. The people that used to do things in the wild, the rules are changing. Everything is dictated now by insurance policies, by how dangerous is it to the people. And as we enter an age where people want more extreme sports, more extreme adventures, they go into places that they've never been to before. The things that we've been doing for 1,000 years, keeping animals, have become more and more regulated all the time. So even in big zoos like Toronto Zoo, the idea of hands-on is becoming something of the past. It's not really an animal wrangler career that's going to be around 30 years from now. We're going to be lucky if there's enough animals around in 30 years, much less being able to touch them. So I like to think that hopefully things will work out, but if not, I was here and I got to do it while I was alive.
Having a relationship is very tough for an animal wrangler, and that's because the relationship is often dictated by the needs of the animal. Take this baby baboon, for instance, who kind of relies on Chris to be his surrogate mother.
No, this job follows me home. When we're done here, we have a baby baboon I have to take home because it's a 24-hour-a-day job. Every 4 hours it gets fed. It's not something you just do Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. It's not that. You can't do it for the money. It's a passion. You just really need to be involved in it for everything you are. It takes up every part of your life, every aspect of your life.
Still to come on A Day in the Life, the human side of working with animals. In what little little spare time Chris has between shows, he's begun teaching a course at Georgian College on animal care. And while shelter management and bylaw enforcement are part of the curriculum, the #1 most important thing he teaches his students is about people.
You have to work as well with people as you do with animals when you work with animals. The only way our conservation and education and animal awareness program would ever even think of succeeding is if we work with people. So a lot of times we get people, even in the college level, where they say, I like to work with animals because I don't like people. And that doesn't work, because no program is going to be successful without the implementation of other people. Well, every day is an adventure with animals, but a lot of our stories include people, and we have a lot of babies born here every year. We know a lot of animals are pregnant, but we don't necessarily know when they're going to give birth. And I was doing a show, and somebody came round up in the middle of the show and said, something just fell out of one of your llamas. So we went up and looked, and it was a baby that had just been born, just fell right out of the llama there. And it was the little white llama that was here. So we said, it's okay, it's allowed to be out, and that's what's supposed to happen. And we just tell people that we provide the babies. Parents, you can explain where babies come from. So we kind of worked it into the show, but a lot of times people just, they don't know what to expect. One of our little lemurs actually is small enough to get outside the enclosure, so he sits on the fence beside you and he plays in the tree. So we have a lot of funny stuff like that. Sometimes the bird screams for his bit in the show, and sometimes people jump back, and sometimes babies cry, and then the bird like it, so they make more noises, things like that. So when they say in the movie business, you don't know what you're ever going to get when you work with kids or animals, they really knew what they were talking about with kids and animals.
Since Chris started at the Elmvale Jungle Zoo many years ago, he's become a bit of a local celebrity. And that's because it's become common knowledge around these parts that he's a human encyclopedia when it comes to animals. Nice kitty. Here there, kitty. Here, kitty.
I wouldn't think it's so much pressure as just I feel an obligation to keep up to date with new information. With like every month there's at least 3 or 4 new magazines, Nature magazine, Scientific America, National Geographic. Everybody gets these magazines, so you want to be versed with what's coming out, as well as all the new kids movies where they associate an animal with a nickname or a new name of an animal or behaviors or things like that. So you get questions that range from Rafiki from The Lion King to physiology of a new genus discovered in Southeast Asia. And sometimes they come from the same kids, so it all depends. You want to try and keep as much current information as possible. Plus you spend a lot of time correcting misconceptions about animals. Like even now we still get people that go, I didn't realize the snakes weren't slimy. I'm very aware of what their environment is, what it includes. Even if it's not inside their enclosure, a lot of them are aware of exactly how far the branches are, which ones they can grab. I'm aware of what the animals are capable of and what they want to be capable of. So you have to be aware that their situations change every day. Lily is pregnant right now. Normally Willie's the very protective, dominant male, but as she gets closer to giving birth, he's more sharing with the food, and he's more aware of her needs for 2. So he's a pretty good dad that way. Sometimes they don't necessarily share their food very well. Oh, you dropped it. You're getting kind of clumsy there. There you go. So we try different foods for them all the time. We try and keep their life as enriched as possible. So we mix it up with fruits and vegetables. Sometimes we put fruits and vegetables in different combinations. Sometimes we freeze them so they can see the fruit in there, and then they have to lick it and it's a different texture. So we try and change different things all the time. And I try and keep in mind that you never want them as pets. They're not supposed to be pets. You don't train them to do tricks. So we find out what they like to do, and then we incorporate it into their enrichment program. Whatever it is that they like to do, we then make it a game for them, so they get a reward out of it for more food or special treats or anything like that. Every animal has the potential to be dangerous. If you don't have at least a minor scare, I think you get too comfortable around animals, and you almost, I know people that have been in the business a long time, and they forget that animals they've worked with for 20 years sometimes have a bad day, and they don't have a way of telling you that they want to be left alone. So one little swat from a paw that's as big as your head can remind you very quickly.
A big part of Chris's job is putting on shows for schools and visitors to the zoo. But unlike in the circus, these shows are more about educating the public than entertaining them.
A lot of times we get people asking questions about what it's like to be in captivity and shouldn't we release these animals? Well, animals haven't come out of the wild in 20 or 30 years, so none of these guys would ever make it. And the problem is not that animals are coming out of the wild, it's that they're either being eaten in the wild, and that's just sustenance. That's not something that's going to wipe out a species necessarily. It's more that there are so many people on the planet using up so many resources at such a fast rate, we're not going to be able to have any wild places left. So if there's a place for a wild animal to be, chances are there's already an animal in it. So it's not like we can just introduce one of ours. There's very, very, very few successful reintroduction programs anywhere in the world. So basically, the zoos know at this point we're an ark. We are just kind of holding on to animals so people still have them, to still keep an interest in animals. More people see animals in zoos every year than baseball, football, and basketball games combined. So that's a great fact for me. It reminds me that sometimes the only way people are going to get a personal connection or an interest or even an awareness of conservation or what they can do or how they can help or make a difference is to come see an animal and make a connection face to face with something. Even if it's behind an enclosure, it's sometimes the closest they're going to get. And again, we've had people that have gone to Africa and China and all over the world, and I've done that myself. And you can be in the rainforest, in the jungle, and not see the animals. Some of them are there, but you just don't necessarily know where they are. Here at the zoo, we've got great trails, we've got great spaces, so you know what you're going to see. You're guaranteed to see everything, and even if they're sleeping, it's still a connection, and that's a fantastic opportunity. This is a zebu from India. It sort of looks like a cow, and if you're a cow, you definitely want to come from India, where they respect and revere cows. So it's not so much like over here where you end up on a plate. These guys are a very, very well-known animal over there. Of course, over here, everybody looks at it and they ask about our cow in the llama enclosure, but this is brand new to the zoo here. This is the first year we've ever had him here, and I think he makes an interesting addition to the zoo. We had kids coming up yesterday saying, oh, we got an animal made in India, and that's what he is. He's never been to India, but that's where they're from. I really don't even like to go to bed at night because I just like to get as much out of the day as possible. The seizing the day goes 24 hours a day. Some days I'll go 2, 3, 4 days in a row and get a couple hours of sleep, but at a certain point you have to rest, and I always want to know what's coming next. Even when you think you've got everything all figured out, somebody changes the rules or the players, and you get new animals, you get new births. There's even been new animals, lions and jaguars cross and produce a new animal that you never even thought was possible. So there's always brand new things coming out, and you want to be able to work with these animals, so you constantly have to be looking for new ways to make things better. You're going to be constantly getting influence from people who either like zoos or don't like zoos or just want things to be better or have an opinion or have been to a different place in the world that I haven't been to and offer advice. And how do I utilize that advice? How do I add it into our curriculum at the college course level? How do I adapt the information so it's understood by kids that are in day camps or kindergartens or children? You have to be able to adapt to every situation. And every situation I'm in, no matter what situation it is in life, I try and apply it to how would it work in an animal situation? How would animals react in this particular instance? And I do it whether I'm in a club or whether I'm out in a mall or anything like that. I read a great article about swarm migration, about how bees are working as a team, but each one isn't very bright, and they actually adapt that to truck routes, to computer plans, to airplane travel routes, all sorts of things. So we're learning things from animals and applying them to our everyday modern technological advanced life every single day. So I find that stuff kind of interesting.
Connecting with the wild. That's next on A Day in the Life. Chris says he worries more about protecting the animals from the people than the other way around. And that's because when people get confronted with nature's creatures, they tend to get a little crazy. Let's take these giraffes, for example. They had to put this fence up because people were trying to kiss them. If I'm going to kiss you, you're going to have a breath mint. I'm sorry.
Every year we spend as much time and effort and money protecting our animals from people as we do people from animals. So again, I return to people. I think they're the most clever and the most devious sort of creatures on the planet. They're one of the few animals that actually hunt other animals for sport. So it's not the animals so much I worry about. I'm always aware that they have the potential to be dangerous. People I just assume are going to be dangerous, and I have to just act accordingly, that's all. Some people, some birds, some reptiles, some crocodiles can live to be almost 100, some tortoises can live to be 150, and some whales can live to be 200 years old. That's right, Anna. Now everybody's paying attention to you. Carpe diem, that's, it's a tattoo I had. It's something I believe, something I remind myself every single day. Seize the day. It's Latin. It's based in the same language as science, and it just means basically seize the day. Make the most of every day. I like to get up and think, what if this was my last day on earth? What if this was it? Am I doing something I enjoy? Am I around people I like? Do I have the time to put up with people who are intolerant of the things I like, or the things that I'm doing with my life, or other people? Are they impatient? I don't know. I like to be around things that make me happy. So that's how I try and spend every day.
Every day, Chris handles a variety of different animals that in the wild would be considered dangerous. And although they're relatively tame right now, the reality is that Mother Nature still rules.
I respect each animal for what its abilities are. Monkeys, like we've got the gibbons up there that can turn 180 degrees in mid swing with a ball socket joint. They're the only animal on the planet like that. I think of how we could learn different things from animals. We're learning how to use snake venom for different treatments in medicine and whatnot. So just because we've had a preconceived idea that something is dangerous, we're just now figuring out how to adapt it to our own problems. That's the only time people are going to be curious about animals, when it comes down to how can it help us. That's just nature of the beast, and that's the way people act. Now you'll see this big male here coming up. He keeps a pretty close eye on his territory. His territory could be 4 acres in Africa, or it could be 400 feet in here, and he really wants to know what's going on, make sure no males are coming to take his female, especially since they've been breeding all summer long. Yeah. She thinks I'm her mom, so stop kissing me. Stop kissing me, yuck. Yuck. Ugh, you have chicken breath. Nature is neither kind nor patient. It doesn't give you a chance to learn. Some animals, you've got 10 minutes from the time you're born to learn how to get up, run, and survive. That's it. Even big predator animals like lions, only 2 out of every 10 in the wild survive to be adults. So even though you're king of the jungle, you may not ever survive to be the king of the jungle. Just because you're going to be the biggest doesn't mean you start out that way. I think one of the biggest things is you have to continue to have an interest in expanding your knowledge. You can never say, I know everything. I even hesitate to say I'm an expert on, because there's no such thing anymore. There are so many new sources of information coming from all over the world. You can be connected to animal migration as it happens for different types of species. You can actually watch how different animals change migratory patterns according to pipeline introduction into their territories. All sorts of things. As soon as you stop thinking that you can learn something, you're useless in the field. Even though that snake is big enough to be able to eat pigs, goats, deer, most of the front row, you wouldn't know it was there. Bright yellow, not a color you want to be. You don't want to look like a 25-foot giant banana when you're trying to surprise your animals. So that is an unusual color. When you guys see our tigers, you guys all know what a tiger looks like, right? Orange with black stripes. We've got white tigers with black stripes. Every day with animals still teaches you brand new things. As soon as I get to the job and I think I've learned everything I need to learn, I don't need to learn anymore, I'm done. I won't come back, and I haven't had a day like that. I like that I can come out and still be surprised by things every day. Just see new things. Every year, every season, we get brand new animals. We get brand new surprises. and it's just exciting stuff.
What a cool day this has been, spending the day with a real-life animal wrangler. I spent the whole day with all kinds of different animals, from snakes to tigers to lions. You name it, they have it here at the Elmvale Jungle Zoo. But after meeting so many different kinds of animals, I think I've decided to stay with something a little more my speed, like Buttercup here. Hey there, Buttercup. Am I too old to go on the pony rides?